Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you online. I'm so very sorry that we weren't able to meet at the Redbridge Town Hall. We really did aspire to see you in person this year, but forces conspired against us. So here we are online once again. We've got a really informative hour for you. And so I'm just going to get stuck in. May I have the next slide, please? And the next one. So it's with great sadness I need to inform our community that our Deputy Lead Governor, Mark Dale, passed away suddenly last month. He was an inspiring individual whose unwavering passion for the NHS, commitment to co-production and advocacy of the LGBTQIA plus community left a lasting impact on anyone who ever had the privilege of working alongside him, or in fact, for anybody who knew him. He was particularly well known and loved in Essex, where he also served as a governor for the Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust. His warmth, compassion, and dedication enriched the lives of all who knew him. Our deepest sympathies, love, and support are with Mark's family and loved ones during this really difficult time. He will be greatly missed, but his spirit and dedication will remain with us always. May I please ask everyone to observe a moment of silence in Mark's memory. Thank you very much for that. May I have the next slide, please? We're fortunate to have with us this evening many trust members, governors, users of service, staff, and members of the communities that we serve. I wanted to welcome in particular Richard, Sen, and Dariush, our three newly elected governors whom I had the privilege to spend some time with earlier this week. May I have the next slide? And also to congratulate Gabby, Robert, Beverly, and Ian, who have been reelected as governor. Next slide, please. Next on our agenda, our Chief Executive, Paul Kalaminas, will talk about the challenges and achievements of 23-24 and about our key areas of focus. I'm really delighted that Paul will be joined by Nadia Ahmed, co-production lead for the Trust and lead for our Developing Academy for Lived Experience. Nadia will be talking about our achievements and ambitions to support and empower our service users and carer leaders and ensure that the voices of people with lived experience are truly at the heart of everything that we do and every strategic decision that we take at the Trust. Wellington McCullough, our chief nurse, will outline our key areas of focus in relation to care and quality. Navin Kalia, our chief financial officer, will talk about financial performance and the work that we're trying to do to ensure we make the best possible use of every pound. The annual report, annual plan, and quality account for the last year are all available on our website, and the links can be found in your agenda for this evening's meeting. Microphones will be muted for all except for those who are speaking to items on the agenda. We've received many pre-submitted questions, more than I'm afraid we'll have time to answer this evening, but we'll go as far as we can in the time we have together. We'll subsequently publish all of the questions and answers together on our website. And if you have any additional questions, please email the corporate affairs team, and their email address will be found later on in the agenda. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for joining us. Please do provide feedback on whether you found this useful and what would be useful to you. Your voices are most important. And I'd like to hand over to Paul Kalaminas, our Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just check you can hear me? Yeah, you can. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. To start, I think I wanted to say that the last year has not been easy for the Trust, nor indeed the wider NHS as a whole. And we, like many others, have seen continued challenges that relate to demand and capacity. Indeed, the continued consequences of COVID and the COVID pandemic, coupled with the cost of living crisis for so many in so many of the communities we serve. And this has manifested itself in a number of areas. To pick just a few, in the demand for acute mental health beds and the number of people coming into services in mental health crisis, many of whom we have never met before. In the rising numbers of young people presenting to services, in some of the challenges we have in addressing waiting times in a number of areas, and in the financial pressures, not only in the Trust and in the NHS, but also that are being felt by our social care partners. And in September of last year too, we here at NELFT were charged with corporate manslaughter relating to the sad death of Alice, a patient on one of our mental health wards in 2015. And one of our ward managers, Benjamin, was charged too with gross negligence manslaughter. And as well as this, we are also involved in the Lampard inquiry, which is taking place into mental health inpatient services in Essex. I'm not able to talk in any detail about the court case because the case itself is now in court. But for me, in the midst of all the pressures I've alluded to, the importance of focusing on quality and hearing the voice of our patients, staff, and communities has never been more important. And to help us do this, we have identified 10 quality and safety themes through which we can take forward our quality improvement work over this year and into the years beyond. Wellington, I know, will reflect this in more detail when he talks to the detail of the quality account. And whilst these pressures are real, there has also been much over the last year to be encouraged by and to be proud of. In community services, for example, we have seen a range of new facilities, bringing together services from NELFT and wider health and social care, in some cases including housing, in a way that to me really brings to life the vision outlined by the new Secretary of State for Health of moving care from hospital to the community. It has been a real pleasure to see the development of integrated working in Corringham, and more recently to see the opening of Ilford Exchange, of Beam Park, and of the St George's Health and Wellbeing Centre. It has been encouraging too to see the impact of the development and implementation of community home-based inpatient wards in London and Essex, and the development of new intensive community support teams for people with learning disabilities and children in crisis. The impact of these teams has been enormous, hugely significant, enabling people to receive care at home, and particularly for young people, meaning that if a hospital bed is needed, it is available much closer to home and closer to their friends, families, schools, and networks. And we hear from those young people the impact that this has on them. Another theme of the year has been the impact of technology, both in areas such as prosthetics, with the development of new limb technologies, as well as digital services. So as just one example, in the last year, we were the first trust to enable electronic prescribing direct from hospital to community pharmacy. Implemented first off in Kent, and meaning that parents and children in Kent no longer had long journeys to pick up paper prescriptions, an approach that we are now rolling out across the trust. And in inpatient services too, we have been able to increase capacity somewhat with the opening of Rodney Ward at Goodmayes Hospital. And thanks, I have to say, to the persistence and dedication of a number of staff at the hospital to reopen the cafe on the Goodmayes site, an initiative that also provides employment opportunities for patients in the hospital. Recruitment for me has also been a big theme of the year. At the beginning of the 2023-24 financial year, 1 in 5 posts in this trust was vacant, a 20% vacancy rate. I'm pleased to say that since then we have welcomed over 1,600 people into the trust, and are on track to end this year with a vacancy rate around 8%. And a very special welcome again to all of those who, as part of that, have joined us from overseas. Retention too has improved, and I really do want to recognise all the work that has gone into making this a reality, and that continues to go into making this a reality. And at this point, I must mention the work of all the networks across the trust, who do so much to connect people, support retention, and enable us to work effectively together. At the same time, we have been working to ensure that our teams and that all of us are as effective as possible. And a key element of this has been working to come back to face-to-face clinical work as a bedrock of our practice. Something that, of course, was not easily possible at all during the COVID pandemic years. And this, I'm sure, is something that we will continue to focus on as we move through the coming years and building a new way of working with our patients and communities. Of course, I was not CEO of this trust at the beginning of the 23-24 year. And so I did absolutely want to pay a huge tribute to Jackie Van Rossum, my predecessor, and to thank her for all her work as both trust CEO and over many years previously in the trust in her different roles. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to mark the retirement of Malcolm Young, our previous Chief Financial Officer, and to thank Selina Douglas, our previous Executive Director of Partnerships, for all her work before her move to be the Chief Executive of Leeds Community Trust. And not to forget, of course, Carrie Ann Wade, our former Director of Communications and Charity. I wanted to, Chair, to welcome all of our new non-executive and executive directors and members of the board, and of course to congratulate you on your reappointment as Chair of the Trust here at Nelft, and of course in our neighbour trust at Elft. Looking to the future, the immediate operational and financial strains on the NHS and other parts of the public sectors show to me little sign of abating. We are, though, working to set out our direction as Nelft. This is reflected in all the work with our patients and staff on the development of our new trust strategy that is soon to be launched, with a real focus on our role in both improving health and providing quality healthcare. And for me, there will continue to be 3 key ways of working that underpin what we do going forwards. And these are, first of all, clinical leadership, really empowering our clinicians to lead improvement. Quality improvement, and using the tools and techniques that we have built up the expertise to use in this trust more effectively and more reliably across all the areas in which we work. And hugely importantly, patient leadership. And this represents, I think, a huge shift in the way we work. And it is a huge pleasure to be joined today by Nadia Ahmed, who is going to talk further with us about the importance, challenges, and impact of this work. So Nadia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Next slide, please. So, hello, folks. I'm Nadia Ahmed, and I today come to you as both the Patient Experience Academy and co-production lead, and the Young Adults Network leader at NELFT. And I also come as someone with lived experience of navigating NELFT services. And I've witnessed firsthand the transformation potential of true co-production. You see, for me, co-production isn't just a process. It's a philosophy that's grounded in equitable and meaningful relationship building. And that amplifies the voices of us who are navigating services as well as people who are delivering them too. And I want to keep it in the back of all of your minds today. I hope that I illustrate with an update about what the involvement team is doing, why building services with people rather than for them is not only preferable, but is essential. For me, this isn't professional. It's deeply personal. So bring your whole self, because we're all experts in our own experiences. If you're present here today, be more than just that. Bring your unique personality, because you're experts in your own experiences. You see, our experiences arise through engagement with the world and with others, and if you listen to me, my story collides with yours. And I hope that's where we can begin today. I don't think giving powerful models or constructs or ideas of what we constitute as engagement and consultation would be beneficial, but I think it would be nice to just have a little thought process or mapping of the thought process behind what the involvement team is doing, giving a rationale behind it. Next slide, please. So I wanted to first start off with our commitment to using lived and living experiences. So when we discuss lived and living experiences, we're not only invoking an abstract concept, we're talking about complex, ongoing realities that people like us bring to this space. These aren't just past events, but active and evolving experiences that demand acknowledgement and interrogation and useful integration into our frameworks. You see, true co-production does more than just consult. It really establishes that reciprocal partnership where each voice is not merely present, but is central to creating and shaping that service. And that patient leadership comes first and foremost. I've come to understand that embedding lived experience within our systems really enriches service delivery in ways that even the best training can't replicate. You see, authentic co-production fosters a democratized relationship that, when nurtured, really becomes a means and an end to a robust co-production practice. So before deploying resources or implementing plans, we really need to develop those relationships that are grounded in that curiosity and that mutual respect. It's not just about increasing the volume of co-production. It's about harmonizing all of our voices and recognizing that we are experts in our own experiences and experts in our own communities with our insights and clinical knowledge too. And we can really thrive in a space where everyone's contributions are evaluated and respected. But I want to be a bit critical about it too. Next slide, please. You see, of course, co-production, as many will attest, is not without its complexities, especially considering the difficulties that we're currently going through right now as an NHS trust. And there's often skepticism that arises around whether or not co-production is one of those idealistic or even impractical concepts, especially given our resource constraints. And I hear those concerns regularly, and I understand their merit. You see, co-production can really unsettle really established norms and invites really a lot of discomfort and risk, particularly in a system where resources are already really stretched. But that's precisely the embracing front that this discomfort needs to create meaningful progress. You see, critics cite naive optimism as a barrier, suggesting that expecting transformational change that's massive without sufficient resources is a misguided concept. And while it's true that genuine transformation requires that commitment and that time and that resources and that inertia, I believe these challenges shouldn't deter us from good co-production. That change demands courage, and the current challenges our system faces does not diminish the need for that transformation. Instead, it just heightens that urgency for good co-production. Of course, there's a lot about how we intervene earlier, like you mentioned, Paul, working in the community, investing in community care and rebalancing from hospitals. And this is an opportunity and direction about what we can do in communities and working in partnership with our local authorities and us as our community patients. We feel the effects of austerity. Of course we do. And we can't be naively optimistic about that. But does it mean that we had to ignore co-production altogether? I don't think so. Another common misconception about co-production is that we really need to look at measurement. And measurement is what the NHS really thrives on, as well as symptom reduction. This is what care is mapped out against and commissioned by. And when we start thinking about that, we start to fall back to the very transactional nature of throwing money and resources at communities to alleviate distress, rather than really building those relationships and effective community understanding. Once we reduce symptoms to measurements, we lose touch of what it is to actually be connected to our communities. And I felt that in my care. We fall back to doing on to rather than doing with. You see, deep-rooted human processes are in work wherever we are, and we come to make changes to our environments that make people flourish. Our healthcare system has long prioritized that symptom reduction and measurable outcomes, but what do our communities actually find meaningful in measurement? I think we need to scale back on that and think about how we do that right. Also thinking about mental consent, mental capacity, the capacity to engage in perhaps really traumatic or re-traumatizing aspects of service transformation, both as experts by expertise and expertise by experience. Services are also really scared to also approach that capacity to provide the right aftercare. And also money, costs. Costs are also really likely to increase significantly as co-production advances. And I agree that financial arguments should inform choices over changes to services. I agree that financial arguments should inform what is possible to achieve in tandem with the previous 3 points. But at the same time, excessive focus on that balance sheet can really prevent us from recognizing the wider issues of relationship building. This approach asks us to value relationships as much as results. And even if these aren't always easy to quantify, we need that shift. It seems daunting, but it got me thinking about what the involvement team can currently be doing now to contribute to that shift. Next slide, please. You see, the Learning Academy is a project that I have been leading and co-creating with users of service and members of the involvement team. You see, for co-production to really function as intended, patient engagement must transcend what we usually do right now. It requires inviting people into decision-making processes where their experiences and insights have actual real-time impact. And as someone who's experienced both the strengths and limitations of what this service can provide, I can understand how meaningful engagement can really reshape those outcomes. And that's why I've been really dedicated to developing this Learning Academy, a space that's co-produced with our communities, with our involvement representatives and volunteers. And this academy really does provide that training and career support, and most importantly, that structured approach to understanding what co-production is itself. We have learning zones that follow on induction and awareness training for new involvement representatives and volunteers coming in so they know what's going on in Nelft, training and education that's been selected by our community members and volunteers with online courses that support them with their well-being, access to the internet, work experience support, career support, workshops, and they are awesome. I'm quite biased towards co-production training as well for all involvement reps and volunteers that's been co-created and co-delivered with them. It's fantastic. To witness this take root and grow has really been profoundly gratifying as someone who was just on the other end of that transaction as a user of service, as it stands as that really authentic example of a patient-led initiative. Next slide. You see, with patient engagement as well, we also have a vision to expanding our locality-based groups and patient-led groups, our patient leaders who provide our communities with a forum to address their needs in ways that go beyond mere discussion. This effort is embodied in spaces like the Young Adults Network that I've co-created and have co-facilitated for the past year. And it serves our communities, of us, by us, and for us. It addresses specific needs that can be easily overlooked by us as community members. As equitable partners, we can call these out in our localities and really be led by us. I really do believe that we need outcomes that are meaningful from our communities too, and allowing us to be responsive of that advocacy, to be present, really represents the needs of those who are using the services without making hypotheses or assumptions. And that starts to illuminate the dark recesses of healthcare that we might not be fully aware of too. Our patient leaders are doing fantastic work on this. By prioritizing patient leadership, we're also reaching board level too. With the support of Eileen and Paul, we're breaking away from that traditional hierarchical model and allowing our voices to be represented at board too. We can actually make that influence and decision-making process directly at board. And it isn't about tokenizing representation, it's about reimagining that healthcare leadership to include those who use our services within the communities that we serve. Next slide. You see, my hope and my vision from my lived experience as a user of service at Nelft and with the involvement team is simple but powerful. It's designing services together with equitable respect for every single voice. You see, when professionals and patients share power, we start to see real change. And it isn't top down, it's about making spaces for people to bring their whole selves, their insights, and even their doubts in their room, like I did today with my evaluations. When co-production is done right, it is fantastic. It's less about process and more about building relationship and culture that is rooted in trust and equity. We've launched our first modules, developing our further modules in our Learning Academy to contribute to the Learning Academy co-production materials. We're co-delivering them. We have our website that's been launched as well. Search co-production on the Nelft website to get a flavor of what we're doing. And we really want to develop those digital skills too. Next slide. So as I end my section, I want to extend an invitation out to each and every one of you on the call today. You're all experts in your own experiences. If co-production feels like something that you want to be a part of, then join us online, send us a message. Whether you're a clinician, a carer, someone who's used Nelft services like I have, we need each other to make this work. And bear with me whilst I find the right terminology to refer to different intersections of our communities. I may use patient or service user or user of service, but I also recognize that these identities are not mutual too. We can be users of service and providers of the service at the same time. It's crazy. And we often forget that. I'm giving back despite my experiences as a user of service, as a survivor, and really with that burning wish to do co-production right, because I believe in it. Not just as a theoretical label, but a practical solution that's grounded in community, grounded in respect, grounded in collaboration. It's a challenging journey, but I'm hopeful. Now, there is so much more fabulous stuff going on with the involvement team, and I don't have as much time as I wish to outline all of the other wonderful things happening in the involvement team, but get in contact, involvement@nelft.nhs.uk. Also, the comms team are also prompting me to move, but I'm here today because I genuinely believe in good co-production, not just as an idea, but as a real solution grounded in our communities representing us. It's challenging, but I'm hopeful. And Paul, I'll hand over to you to close.
Nadia, thank you. You've said that better than I possibly could. And you can see, I hope everyone on the call can see how important this is in taking our steps forward over the next year and beyond. And on that note, Chair, let me hand back to you.
Thank you. I think I've taken a chair's decision that Nadia should do all presentations going forward. Her infectious presentation style is just so inspiring. And I do hope that she's inspired some of you who are on this call tonight to get involved, because we would really, truly love to see you. So Wellington, may I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Paul. Nadia, what can I say? Thank you for doing the quality accounts on my behalf. So I've got very little to say because I think what really we are talking about quality accounts at the heart of everything we do as an organization is the users of our service. At the heart of everything we do is people who have got lived experience, people who have got living experience. At the heart of what we do is the carers, so our residents. So I think hearing the voice of Nadia, someone who's got lived experience, who is to me a colleague because we work alongside each other trying to deliver the best possible care every single day. It's just really great. So thank you for that. And thank you for reminding us around co-production and what it looks like and taking us on a journey from last year. So why quality accounts? So if we can go to next slide, please. So there's a requirement for all of us organizations to do quality accounts, but I think as an organization, we don't want to do it because it's a requirement. I think we use it as a time to stop, reflect, recharge ourselves, refocus on what's important, learn from what we've done previously in order to get us where we need to get to. It also gives us an opportunity to look forward to what are those key priorities which we need to focus on. It gives us an opportunity, like what Nadia has just done, to look back at the last year. When I came here last time, I was talking about our commitment to co-production, our commitment to hearing voices of people who are using our services, our commitment to make sure that actually they raise that focus. And Nadia today has been a testimony of our commitment from last year of what we say we will do. And actually show that we've continued to do that and we will continue to do that. So that's really great. And quality accounts give us that opportunity to do that. It also gives us an opportunity with quality accounts to celebrate things we do. A number of awards. If I was to sit here and start to talk about the awards which has been won in the last year, you'll be here for the next couple of hours, which I'm not sure you'll be celebrating them, but you'll be like thinking this is too long because there's been so much done to achieve. I think Paul has mentioned how challenging it's been in the last year, but even in that challenge, our colleagues have continued to deliver the best possible care. Our colleagues have continued to really stand out and be counted, and actually we continue to get awards and recognition of that work we're doing. And our quality accounts gives us that opportunity to do. But there's something also important with quality accounts. It gives us an opportunity to come to you and give our commitment for the next year. So similar what we did last year to say we're going to focus on co-production, focus on voice of power using our services. Our quality accounts for this year will say what we're committing to do for the 24-25 year. So that when we come back here next year, this time, we can have another voice of Nadia saying, did we do what we said we're going to do? Since our chair has already committed Nadia to be doing presentations, so we'll be excited to hear again from Nadia about our commitment which we're giving today. So if we move to next slide, please. The priorities of last year, honestly, I can't do better by far than what Nadia has already done to talk about what we have achieved in the last year around co-production, around the voice of people who are using our services. It's just been great. Paul has mentioned how many people has been recruited over the last year and actually how we are working towards our commitment that actually we are going to get to maybe about 8% vacancy rate where we came from 20-something%. And I think that has been a great achievement. That's something which we had committed last year that we're going to work on as an organization. We committed that we're going to move from the SI framework, which is the serious incident framework, to really move into a space where we started to look at patient safety incident response framework, which changes the narrative from just doing things in silo and moves us to a place of learning in a different way. And we have done that. And we have now done a year of that, and we'll talk about our 10 themes which came from that work. And I think we've achieved a lot in that space. We also kind of like came and talk about actually our commitment around actually how do we make sure that users of service voice is included in training. Nadia, who's here, is core part of our risk formulation training. And we committed as an organization that we will not roll out that training until we have got the right people, co-produce the training, co-produce and co-deliver it, that the voice of people who are using our services and carers are really driving what we need to do. So our commitment to that patient leadership, I think, is shown in the piece of stuff we've done last year. We also came here last year and we're talking about what we needed to do in the carer space. If you take away carers, you will need another NHS, a second one, because what carers do is so much. They are not paid to do what they do, but they do that because they care. They do that, and our job is to care for them. Because if those people who care are not cared for, the question is always what type of care would they deliver? So our job is to support the carers, to identify them, to support with things like carers assessment. So we've done a co-production over the last year of our carer strategy, which has been went really well, and it will be launched very soon. But we wanted to engage. We did a number of engagement with our carers to do that, and that was one of our commitments from last year. We had also said I wanted to make sure that actually the care plans are co-produced, that we've got the voice of users of service in that, and that has continued to improve. We're at 60%. Our target again is 100% because every single care plan, and it's one of our task and finish group are part of the 10 themes, which I'll touch on. So that was our commitment from last year. Next slide, please. So what have we been doing apart from working on those commitments? Paul has mentioned, but what we've really focused on, previously we had focused on clinical leadership, and we'll continue to do that. But we wanted to have a renewed approach, around our quality management system, which is really around that, how do we make sure that actually the learning from what we've done, we can then be able to bring quality controls, quality assurance, quality management, that those teams can come together, that we can really focus on learning. And that's something which we're working on as an organization at the moment. Next slide, please. And the part which I think the next slide, Paul has covered that, which is around like some of the stuff, which is challenges which have gone through. But really, in all those challenges, in all those parts, what we've looked at, what can we do better? What are we learning as an organization, and how do we improve? And those challenges, what they've done is they've also helped us with our renewed focus on quality improvement and patient safety. Next slide, please. So 2024-25, what we've done again is to make sure that actually our quality priorities are aligned with the annual plan. So the focus again will be continue to embed what we've talked about, what we've already put in. How do we continue to embed those improvements? How do we make sure that actually innovation is in that space? Embedding learning from our 10 themes, which we've talked about. How to make sure that actually we consolidate on our workforce. It's not just about getting them in, it's about keeping them in, it's about supporting them, it's making sure that we don't lose staff, the retention gets better. We also look at things like how do we improve productivity and value. And for our services we provide, I think, which is really important. Sometimes people don't want to hear about the word productivity, but I think we know that it is important that we get the best of the value of every pound which we've got. I'm aware of time, so next slide, please. What we've also done, working with our governors this year, in the last year, and looking at the commitment, our governors, we also co-produced with them 4 areas they wanted us to focus on, which you can all see. And I think one of those areas included around like how do we make sure that actually we are focusing on children, that the health and improvement of those children gets better, including things like actually how do we make sure that we create a digital innovation. We are very good at digital. So those 4 areas which the governors wanted us to focus on are also linked to our quality improvement. And we will continue to work with governors that every meeting, our commitment was every meeting this year, coming year, we'll be updating them on those 4 areas. Next slide, please. My next slide and my last slide is really just giving you a glimpse of around the 10 themes which we're working on. So those are the areas which came from a review of 5 years of serious incident, or 5 years of complaints, 5 years of Regulation 28 of prevention of future death. And we looked at areas which kept coming. And those 10 themes are the areas which we're focusing on. And we've got driver diagram, we've got colleagues who are working through that. We report to QAC, we report to board. This is our commitment to change the narrative around those areas where things have gone wrong and how we can get better as a system. And all those 10 commitments are also co-produced. We've got Voice of Carers and Voice of Users of our service. I will stop there and hand over back to our chair. Thank you.
Wellington, thank you so much for that canter through the quality account. I always find it informative to sit and listen through it. So may I now hand over for the final presentation to Navin Kalia, our Chief Financial Officer, who will talk to you about the annual report and accounts.
Thank you, Eileen. If we can go to the next slide, please. The submission of our annual report and accounts are a statutory requirement and subject to external auditor approval. And pursuant to that, the annual report and accounts for North East London Foundation Trust were laid before Parliament ahead of the 10th September 2024 deadline. Next slide, please. From the internal audit findings for the 23-24 financial year, the Audit and Risk Committee considered 9 completed internal audit reports from KPMG, with 5 of the 9 reports providing significant assurance with minor improvement opportunities. 1 internal report provided partial assurance with improvements required. Next slide, please. In the main, the opinion from the internal audit team was that significant assurance with minor improvement opportunities can be given on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the trust framework of governance, risk management and control. So a very good outcome. Next slide, please. As this slide shows, some of the indicators of an organization's financial success can be gleaned from achieving a financial surplus or producing an approved set of financial accounts. Next slide, please. From the 23-24 financial year, the Trust reported an income and expenditure surplus of 3 million, which we'll see at the bottom of the slide there. Against our control total that was agreed with the ICB and NHSE. After allowing for the impact of the revaluation of our land and buildings and introduction of PFI remeasurements, the actual accounts show a small deficit of 229k when adding back the same impact, and it's shown by the little 229 red figures that you can see here. Income for 23-24 had increased by 35.7 million compared to 22-23 to stand at 599 million, a 6% increase on the previous financial year, driven by increases in mental health investment standard, service development funding across the trust mental health contracts, community contracts growth for patient services and generic inflation. As part of the planning process, cost reduction schemes and initiatives totaling 10 million were required to deliver the 23-24 financial plan. Additionally, another 5 million in cost reductions were not achieved in 22-23, making a total requirement for 23-24 over 14 million. In year, total reductions of 14 million were achieved by the Trust. However, 8.8 million were non-recurrent. It should also be noted 11 million of balance sheet provisions were used to deliver the 23-24 position. These items will have an impact when we go into the 24-25 financial year and has increased the efficiency target that the Trust needs to realise in that year. Headline operating expenses, we spent £594 million running the organisation, and unsurprisingly, the bulk of our costs were related to staffing costs at just under 80%, with an increase of about 37 million. Most of the increase in expenditure were on pay, employers' pension contributions, costs arising from additional activity to the mental investment standard and service development funding, including the use of medical and nursing temporary staff through bank and agency. We obviously also spent money on drugs and the cost of premises. Next slide, please. For the balance sheet and cash flow statements shown here, as at the 31st of March, the Trust had a 37 million cash balance, which was a reduction in compared to the last year, and in part was driven by a 27 million cash usage for the new build of St. George's Health and Wellbeing Hub on behalf of the system. In 23-24, the Trust also took a revaluation of its assets for land and buildings, which led to a net decrease of 4.2 million. The change in the Trust's asset values hence contributed to a higher PDC capital charge for that year of 3.9 million. The external audit opinion overall was an unqualified set of accounts had been produced by the Trust for 23-24 and provided a true and fair view of the figures presented. Next slide, please. From a going concern basis, the Trust has prepared its financial statements and the directors have a reasonable expectation that it will provide the same level of service for the foreseeable future. The Trust has achieved a surplus of 3 million before impairment and PFI remeasurements in the year, starts a new financial year with a healthy cash balance of 37 million. Current assets exceed its current liabilities. The financial plan approved for 24-25 by the board will deliver a continuing operating total of a 4.9 million deficit, consistent with the control total agreed with the ICS. The trust is forecasting a deficit and a cash balance of 38.5 million for 24-25, and the valuation of its assets at April 2024 takes account of market values and the effect of IFRS 16. And I'll stop at that point, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Navin. So we've got about 14 minutes left for questions. And so what I'm going to do is read out some of the questions that have been submitted. And thank you to all of you who took the time to do that. And I will hand over to relevant executives to answer the questions. So the first question, so Navin, prepare yourself, it's coming for you. I would like to ask, please, with the general NHS having financial burdens, how will this affect services within NELFT? And can there be any chance of more funding for services to better serve our service users, patients in the next financial year?
Thank you for the question. The NHS has ring-fenced future growth allocation within the mental health investment standard. This is also used on funding new services or increasing services. The NHS also is obligated to make an efficiency requirement and deliver it within the national guidance. And this pushes us to be more innovative in how we provide best quality service for the resources that we have. Guidance for the 25-26 financial year is not due to be released until the end of December, which will take into account the autumn statement that was released by the government recently.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, I wanted to say that co-production is also a really great way to understand efficiencies, because our patients and our communities actually understand much better what things that we can do to improve the time that we spend with our communities. The second question, Breed, this is coming for you. What is the NELFT executive leadership team doing to ensure that the patient care journey is not fragmented when referred between departments within NELFT in the same integrated care system, i.e. Northeast London, or when a referral onward is made to the acute providers in Northeast London? Unfortunately, NELFT departments continue to discharge back to general practice with recommendations that a re-referral is made by the GP to another department or specialty within NELFT. The same phenomena takes place when a NELFT Community Health Services, instead of referring directly to acute specialist service, they discharge back to a GP. And there's actually a frown next to that. This creates duplication and delay with little to no benefit to patient experience. Breed.
Hi, so I would agree there. It's the feedback we've had, and we're aware at the moment of both going in and out through the trust back to GPs. Inter-referrals between teams are an area that we've prioritized for improvement this year. So we were aware of a number of issues within particular pathways that are historical. So we're picking those up. If I use musculoskeletal services, as that is one we've been reviewing through an improvement network and creating a new process and pathway that's under discussion at the moment with our clinicians and our patients. And we've got an internal delivering value program where it's absolutely looking at the inter-referrals between our own teams and the historical need to go back to a GP maybe for onward referral. We're looking at how we can streamline and simplify the process.
Thank you very much, Breed. And in the work that we do with our governors who are members of the local communities are a really important source of identifying these tensions for us. And one of our governors, who's a GP, brought one of these issues to my attention a couple of months ago. So it's just an example as to how we rely on communities to actually tell us where these tensions are. So another reason to actually get in contact with Nadia. Third question, and this is for Judith. Is there community education towards older carers to use the technology of smartphones, etc., to reach their service providers?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to say that we've got a close relationship with third sector. So Age UK provide this within Waltham Forest, Redbridge, Barking, and Havering, and host their own support classes. So we actively support individuals to get to those sessions. In Essex, we have Essex ACL, which also offers these free digital skills courses. So we do make sure that our service users have access to high quality digital training.
Thanks very much, Judith. The next question, Judith, also for you. Can you please address the cultural variance, particularly towards dementia services to the carers' upliftment? A specific part of this has come under the patient and carers race equality framework.
Thank you, Chair. So Wellington made reference to our trust carer strategy, and the group has been looking at the inpatient experience for carers. With findings that are really very relevant to dementia services. So we are looking at and recognizing cultural variation. And actually an example came when a Muslim carer highlighted the need for additional support during Ramadan due to unique challenges, which we were able to consider and meet those needs. We also make reference and think about carers from the global majority who might not identify themselves as carers and viewing caring as a cultural obligation. So the cultural perceptions of dementia might well vary. So we have PCREF, our Patient Carer Race Equality Framework, which has indicated that Black and South Asian communities are amongst the most affected. So we are looking very closely in developing culturally tailored education, community engagement, cultural competency training for staff, and of course personalised support plans, and looking always for feedback from our carers to improve our services and to co-produce those improvements. But very, very keen to increase that stakeholder engagement in our carer and dementia care. And in fact, our Associate Director for Social Work, Liz Valarin, would be really, really keen to meet with anybody who wants to become more involved.
Great, thank you, Judith. This question is for Simon. How are you going to manage the large number of staff leaving due to the changes in flexible working?
Thank you, Chair. We look at our data all the time, and there's no current indication that there is any increase in staff leaving. We have and continue to have support flexible working, and that remains in place. And obviously, we review individual opportunities for flexible working and relate that to the needs of the service and of the individual. So our commitment to that remains.
Thank you very much, Simon. And the next question is also for you, Simon. Is it possible to have one person who is knowledgeable about staff pension to address the staff at some point?
So pensions are an extremely complex area, and we do not have an in-house pension specialist, but what we would always do is recommend that staff speak with the NHS Pensions Agency directly about their own circumstances. That's the best way they can ensure direct access to all of their pensions information.
Thank you, Simon. Wellington, this is for you. In light of the new requirement for staff to be based in the office, how do you think this will truly affect supporting patients? Patients may present as clean and tidy when coming to the office, but not be like this in their own environment, because from my lived experience, this is something I know to be true. Or patients may suffer increased stress levels by coming to the office and the travel and cost to get there. So surely isn't the best place for patients to judge what support they need, to have meaningful contact with them when they are in their homes and in the community.
Thank you, Chair, and really a good question, which again emphasizes on our commitment. So what we're asking our colleagues to do is not coming into the office. What we are really asking most of our clinicians to do is to be able to see our users of service and patient face to face in person. And when we say in person, we really encourage that to be happening in people's homes. So really, I think asking colleagues to come back to the office will improve the assessment, the outcome for users of our service and our patient, because we'll be expecting that most of our patients will be seen in their own environment. And people, if wanted to come to the office, they would come to the office. So that reduces telephone call assessment. It would also reduce things like video assessment, but it would then be led by the users of service on what they prefer as the best way to be seen.
Thanks, Wellington. And this, which will need to be the final question, and it's quite a complex question, is also for you, Wellington. So you may just need to answer parts of it, and then we can answer the question more fully in writing after the meeting, because this is actually a really big topic. How does the board assure itself about the quality of the trust services for people with learning disabilities? Are they aware that the psychology support for the 2,000 people with learning disabilities in Redbridge is no more than 4 days of a behavior analyst and 3 days of a psychologist? Is there a case for this to be reviewed and for a report to be brought to the governors on the issue?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I can see why you say it's complex. It needs to be done in parts. So I think the first part is to say yes. We'll be very, very happy to present a review to the governors. So that's but we'll agree to that. But I think also just acknowledging some of the inequalities which are faced with users of our service who have got autism and learning disabilities. So we acknowledge that. And as an organization, we've got a clinical strategy in that area, which we're implementing, and the board gets its assurance and anything around quality, patient safety through QSC. So the board has empowered QSC, the Quality Safety Committee, to give them that assurance. So everything, not just about learning disability and autism, but all the services which we deliver, that the pattern of the quality goes through QSC, will give then assurance to the board. But I'll be happy to give a more detailed response in writing, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, Wellington, thank you so much for that. So members, colleagues, staff, governors, local communities, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We've thrown an awful lot at you in a very short period of time, but please be welcome to make contact with us. We really want to hear from you. And next year, we hope that in the annual members meeting, we actually have a time to break bread with you, which means that it's just not a talking at you, but that we have some casual time to walk around the room to get to know you a bit better and to know what's on your minds a bit better. So until then, I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Stay safe. And thank you very much for your support for our trust. Good night.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.